Thanks for tuning in to Hoops Forum, a production of Radius Athletics and a quick timeout podcast. I'm Tony Miller and joined once again this week by my co-host Randy Sherman. Big thanks to our sponsors over at 323 Sports. The folks over at 323 are providing uniforms, equipment, team gear, and more to schools and colleges across the country. I've used them on multiple occasions and have been very pleased. Their customer service is fantastic. So as you prepare for the upcoming school year here, reach out to 323. Let them be your athletic provider. They'll take great care of you. You can find more out about them by visiting 323sports.com, or you can contact a sales rep directly at sales@323sports.com. They'll be sure to do it right for your sports program. Randy and I have a little interesting episode podcast today, because this is one that we did not come up with on our own.
Right.
Randy, this is one that we let computers help generate for us.
Yeah, I had the idea of just feed a prompt into Google Bard, which is the sort of AI search tool powered by Google, and just see where it led us. So you and I said we'll be willing to talk about whatever it spits out. So here we go.
Yeah, a couple of these we've had topics related to a few of the things that it's spit out, not necessarily specifically everything that it talks about. Those of you that are just listening to, we have slides that go along with this, and there are some things included in the slides that we may not directly address. So you might want to go back and look at some of these a little bit later on. You can download those. I'll put those down in the show notes for you as well. First one here, Randy.
Yeah, I think we should start with like what I asked the search, the AI search Google Bard to do, and I just typed in that we needed 5 basketball coaching podcast topics for a high level discussion about basketball tactics, and whatever it responded is what we're going to talk about today, and we're just going to kind of freestyle based on what it gave us.
All right. So, number one, the evolution of basketball offenses and defenses.
Okay. Yeah. So I think we've talked a lot about this, and one thing I think when you think about how basketball is changing, the evolution of basketball offenses and defenses, few things came to my mind right away. You're seeing more and more teams playing 5 out without a low post, without a guy, posting up on the low block. That's been done for decades, or sometimes even there used to be 2 guys down on each block. And I think part of the evolution of basketball is more of open alignments. Obviously, there's a high volume of 3-point shots that are that's a coming from the pros and trickling down. I believe that where I work with some coaches in my ramp program who coach at the high school level, and somewhere between 40 and 50% of their shot attempts are 3-pointers. So I think that's another evolution of basketball on the offensive side.
I think both
go ahead.
I think both for just the alignment and what you're trying to achieve, and then also how you go about doing it. You just mentioned at the end, the end goal, generating more threes, the emphasis on finishing around the rim. Mm-hmm. And what I've seen is, I think at the bottom of it, ultimately what we're trying to do is create space.
Yeah.
To give us an opportunity to drive the ball with the purpose of either scoring it or drawing 2 players to the ball, so that then we can outnumber the other guys on the floor. And that's where we generate the 3-point attempts. And everything has been either you draw 2 to the ball by either spacing and forcing somebody else to come over and help,
mm-hmm.
or by bringing a screener to the ball, which automatically puts 2 people on the ball.
Mm-hmm.
And then the evolution of also the skills of the screener. So instead of always just having somebody that can roll to the rim, which becomes very predictable then in rotations and whatnot, now you have the ability of that screener to pop or to go somewhere else and then set another screen on the floor. And now everybody can shoot, everybody can drive, and everybody can score it. And I I just last week somebody made the joke. It wasn't really a joke. They were just making it was kind of they were trying to be funny with it, but it
Yeah.
seemed like everybody that was announced in the NBA draft was long, athletic, and had the ability to stretch the floor. And every guy was 6'7" with a 6'9" to 7 foot wingspan and had all the skills that I just mentioned. But the reality is that's the result of this positionless basketball and the
Hmm.
style that we've created. We've put more value on those types of players.
Yeah, and I think all of that is true for the professional level.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of our listeners, probably most of them, by the vast majority, don't coach at that level. And I would say there's going to be a trickle down effect, and you're going to be tasked with playing against teams that have leaned into more space, generating 3-point shots, um, playing with greater pace and opening the floor. And I think at some point you have to lean into that, or you're just not going to be able to keep up.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that AI gave us in this response was to talk about how the evolution of offenses and defenses. So how our defense is going to start to adapt to that, and you're seeing things like staying out of rotation through using a lot of switching. You're seeing sort of like dealing with penetration by making these like quick rotations. Like an example might be peel switching or something like that to sort of keep the defense organized and set and not get into that stage of the possession where you're having to rotate and whack out shooters and stuff like that. So
Creating advantages for the offense and for the defense, it's how fast can we neutralize the advantage that
yeah.
was just created. So,
And I've got another thought there, but I think one of the other responses, it might be better to save it for that. So let's go ahead.
okay, second one here, the impact of analytics on basketball coaching.
Yeah. So I'd say it's become increasingly important, just like the chat response, the AI response said, and it kind of goes hand in hand with the first topic. That why have teams made these changes and adaptations to the style of play? Like if you were to go, I don't know if you ever done this, Tony, but like you've just been like looking for something to watch on TV, and maybe NBA TV or ESPN has like a classic game up from the 80s or 90s. It could be college, it could be pros, and I'm watching it and I'm just like, spread out, like get like like you know what I mean? Like so it's I think that sort of instinctual response to just say spread out has happened, and it's a response to what the data is suggesting about offensive efficiency. And I included just a couple little general, I guess, visuals, but on the top one is in our ramp program, we keep a spreadsheet of everyone's sort of just basic, very basic 4-factor analytic data and a few other little interesting stats, true shooting percentage, stuff like that, to sort of help the coaches I work with learn how to maximize offensive and defensive efficiency. I think the point I was tabling till this topic was that that's great. I understand all that, Randy, but what does it mean I should teach my players to be more analytically inclined? Two things come to mind, and I'm sure you have some thoughts too, but I'll start with two things. One, you make offensive decisions basically on where you stand. It's really that simple. Where we stand and around actions and around penetrations. Uh, that on the most basic level, that's what's how analytics has changed the game. If you go back and watch a game from the 80s or 90s, simply put, I can't make it any more basic than this. Players stood in different places than they do now. Don't overthink that. The second thing I would say is defensively, now teams are deciding how they're going to guard ball screens and guard things with the thought of data in mind. Like statistics, data suggests that if we're going to have to give up something in our ball screen coverage, let's say we would rather it be the pull up 2 than a kick 3 or something like that. So um, we're all the analytics have done is give us information. and information is very valuable. And you can choose to knock it and say, I don't like this new style of play or newfangled analytics stuff. You can choose to do that if you like, but all you're doing is ignoring helpful information.
The computer kicked out to make better decisions about player lineups, game plans, and other aspects. I think maybe to make more informed decisions. It's just
Yeah.
another piece of the puzzle that you can fill in and not feel like you have to guess. And um, it's it's not allowing this to determine every decision that's made, because the analytics don't tell you what will happen in a specific situation. It tells you what often happens, or
Or
most
what has
often
happened. They're
happens, or
backward
what
looking.
right, or what has happened. And so because of that, there always has to be a coach from the gut and the coach from just what you feel. But it has, even for us, helped me make more informed decisions about how practice is organized. I think
Hmm.
in regards to the skills that are practiced, or the skills that are practiced most, because when I go back and evaluate how I organized my practices in the past, it was often equal time was given to things that don't call for equal time being given to them.
Yeah,
And
that's a good
even within
point.
the four factors, those four factors, if you know anything about the four factors or have listened to previous episodes that we've talked about, they're not all weighted equally. And so if I were to give each of those factors equal attention, I would be doing a disservice to my players.
Hmm.
And so I think it's just helped us make better decisions about what we practice, when we practice it, what I emphasize to my players, because what you emphasize is what they think matters most. And I think sometimes, I think we've even discussed this before. Like, if you were to ask your players, like, what matters for your team, what are the most important things? If they can't give me in four or five things what those most important things is, then we're probably not very good at anything. So
Yeah.
I think just helping us be more focused in all areas, and be more prepared for the situations that you see most often in games has been another area that's helped our program.
I think this is just going to grow. It's just going to the ability, the technology of what we're going to be able to how we can use data is is only growing. It's only going to get better. It's only going to get smarter. And yeah, so
Yeah, that's good. All right, third one here: the role of player development in basketball coaching.
well, um, I think that's always been important. And but I do think that I do like that AI gave us this response, because I do think that is something that could be a weapon for coaches to take the two previous topics that we've talked about, analytics and sort of like the modern game, if you will, and marry that with your player development, to where you're developing players with the skill set that it takes to play the game the way it will be played, the way it is played to will be played. And I think it's more important than ever for coaches to be able to develop players who are global in their game, meaning they don't just like, okay, our posts need to know our post moves, our guard needs to know our, you know, uh, ball handling or finishing moves or something like that. Like we need, I think player development, probably as we see that industry grow, is going the best of the best are going to be putting developing players that are multiple in their skill set. Uh, a, a, a good example on the screen is a player like Jason Tatum, who's a tall player who's, maybe 15, 20 years ago would have been told to go get on the low block and don't leave that area because he was tall when he was a youngster. But, now he's a basket facing player with multiple skills, can shoot, can drive, can use a ball screen, all of those things. So, um, I think the role of player development, another thing I would say, and that I am a firm believer in, if you're leading a basketball program and listening to this episode, whether that's high school, college, professional, is find a way to tie your player development into your offensive system, to where if there's a style of play that you are going to make an identity piece around your program, that also comes with some priority skills that those players in your program are going to have to learn. For example, if I was going to be a program centered on motion offense, like Bob Knight or Rick Majerus ran and stuff like that, we got to be great coming off screens. We got to be able to do that. But if it was something else like a dribble drive type system, well, we got to be great at starting and finishing drives and hitting catch and shoot threes. And so the player development can be very stylistically influenced as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm coming off 2 weeks of basketball camp with kids that are just all over the country and, different levels and different types of schools. And I just observed a lack of fundamental skills that I think sometimes, probably the training that sometimes is done maybe at the high school level at some places. There's almost an overemphasis on plays or these are the things that we're going to run. And just simply being able to shoot, dribble with both hands, finish around the paint, being able to make the right decision. We've talked a lot about decision making on this podcast, but being able to do all of those things within the game context. And I would say for those that are, whether you're a skill development coach or a high school coach, being able to become a master at teaching the micro skills of the game. So being able to communicate to players how to do a skill, not just this is what we do, but footwork, teaching them the right kind of footwork, teaching them where to look on the floor. Those things, when I've been able to do those better, I found that the actual execution, the skill execution of my players increases. And a lot of that is on you as a teacher, not necessarily you as a play architect. If that makes any sense.
Yeah, it does. So I would say too, I think you raised a good point that if any of our audience are player development coaches, like a skills trainer or something like that, that's a job I've not done. So I'm not going to claim any experience as far as doing it alone, as that's my only job. I think all coaches do a little bit of that. But I would say my advice to you would be start from the game and work backwards. Like I see some things being taught to players that just really are counter to what coaches really want performed within an offense or within the structure of a game. So there is, if you just watch the games and look at what the actions that coaches are teaching in tactics and strategies on the court, and then build your skill development business around helping players be able to execute those actions and knowledgeable in those actions, I think you'd make a fortune, because you're going to be like, oh, these guys are coming. I'm referring all of my future players to this guy, because that instead of sort of like, it's almost like there's this like at odds feeling between the skill development industry and the coaching industry, is that you're teaching players things that I'm kind of hoping they don't use, like, over dribbling and making these combination moves. What I really like you to do, and I'm happy to send you more and more business, is take some of the things that, how to play out of a dribble handoff, how to execute a ball screen versus different coverages, how to do shoot coming off a screen and organize your feet to your footwork point, things like that. If you can send me players that are adept at that, I'm going to send you all the business all day long. Give me your business card. We're gonna open up shop together.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, that's great. All right, fourth one here, the mental side of basketball. You've spent a little bit more time with this than I have, so I'll let you go ahead and start, and I'll try to think about some things as we talk here.
Well, I don't know that I've spent enough time on it, because it is very important. I think the mental side of basketball would be, how do we deal with adversity? How do our players deal with adversity? I had a conversation with a coach recently who was having a problem with a few players, sort of like having I guess you could say, just like negative response habits. So something bad happens. Maybe that's a foul gets called on them, or they miss an easy shot, or uh, they they get subbed out of a game for not necessarily doing something wrong. Just the coach in his normal rotation takes them out of the game. So um, I think when I see a team that I would say, yeah, they don't have a championship mental makeup. Oftentimes, what makes me say that is their response to adversity. I don't know if they didn't expect adversity, or if they thought that there wasn't going to be even a single moment in the game where there was a mistake, a bad call, or something like that. Like, you should go into sports and athletics and competition expecting adversity. And I think when I say mental toughness and the mental side of the game, what I'm really saying is how we respond to negative outcomes. And and I think if I were a coach and really wanted to prepare my team mentally, it would be coaching them through their responses to adversity and negative outcomes.
I have found that, maybe a different way to put that, but I have found that it's almost helping them manage or deal with unmet expectations. And that can
Yeah.
come in the form of not winning games. That can come in the form of not achieving to the level that they would either as a team or individually. That would throw in playing time, the amount of playing time.
Hmm.
And I I don't want to shatter their expectations at the beginning of the year, but I almost want to make it clear to them that maybe some of their expectations aren't necessarily realistic. And
Yeah.
also the fact that, you know, my expectations may be different from their expectations just because they don't understand what it takes to build a team or whatever it is. And so just how to think about those things and how to go about thinking about those things. I think even a conversation that I had this last year, um, I had to have different conversations acting as a interim head coach than I had to as an assistant. And
Yeah.
one of those conversations was talking with a group of players and basically telling them, I get what you're saying and I get how you've come about to that conclusion. But from my point of view, I'm responsible for all 12 of these guys or all 14 of these guys.
Hmm.
And when the conversation was over, all of them were like, we get it. We understand. It's not as the solution isn't as simple as we thought it was going to be. And so I think that as part of just mentoring young people, is they're immature. They don't know what they don't know yet. And so helping them grow in how they think about things and, like you said, handling adversity, team cohesion. How do we work with other players that are different than us? And those are
Yeah.
all non-basketball things, X's and O's things. But those of us that have coached know that those things are as important or potentially more important than what happens on the court. And you spend as much time or maybe more time as a team psychologist as you do as a team X's and O's
Truth.
practice manager when you're a
Truth.
head coach. So yeah, that's a side that I think a lot don't know about or aren't, again, don't know what they don't know when they're young and going into the coaching profession. But the ones who have been around a long time and have had success have learned how to be that team psychologist.
Yeah. And here's one thing I believe. This isn't fact; it's just a belief. Is that victory is going to favor the team that sort of manages its emotions
Mhm.
and manages its stress level, its arousal level, and amid competition, amid the chaos, the storm of a game, the team that can sort of like really stay steady and execute, stay in and don't let the emotions of the game take them away from their mental clarity, if you will. Victory favors those teams, and I would say, as a coach, how can I create some chaos, create some adversity purposefully to train my team to select better responses. Okay, here's what happened. I'm watching the film session and you got a bad call. You spiked the ball down and got a technical, which compounded the situation. That was that was your response to that event. How let's what else just ask the whole team, what else could Randy have done other than spike the ball and get a technical? What let's you have a whole menu of things you could have chosen to do. How can we stay calm in an uncalm? I don't know if uncalm is a word, but if in a chaotic environment,
And going back to some
breathing
of our
techniques,
right.
taking a pause, and practicing our response. And sometimes we have this primal urge that we have to override. Like, I want to act out. I want to spike that ball. That feels easier to me, and I've got to override that.
And going back to some of our previous topics, practicing more with games and game-like situations has just naturally created more of those types of situations, where I think probably in the past, those that just do drilling, you don't get a chance to address those things until you get to the games. And I was just at a practice yesterday, and because of how they had structured the practice, on several occasions with the exact same player, those kinds of situations, chaotic, unfair, came up, and the coach was able to address it and said to him, "No, this situation here in June gives us an opportunity to address this
Mm-hmm.
now, so that when the season comes around, then we have a better response to it." So, yeah, that's cool. All
All
right,
right.
fifth one here: the future of basketball coaching.
The future of basketball coaching. All right.
This could
Yeah.
be a little bit of anything.
Yeah. I mean, we've already talked about how analytics and sort of modernization of tactics is going to impact the future of basketball coaching. But I think where I want to go with this would be, I think the coach that is going to be starting now, say a young coach out of college, or that's just getting started on their career, what does their 20, 30-year coaching career, what is going to unfold during that time? I would say the higher use of technology, uh, using technology to engage your players, using technology that's going to give you more information to make more informed decisions. I'm not as big into, like, Gen Z is different than Gen X, and I'm not that big into that as some people are. But I would say that, like, there are influences on now and future that we don't even know about yet, on young people that we didn't have to deal with when we played, or in the early part of our coaching career, that we're going to have to adapt to, and they're going to be causing players to behave certain ways, and to feel certain ways that we're going to have to really get in tune with. And there's everything is public as far as social media. Everything we do, every workout, every game is out there. So that can create a strong pull for a player to feel stress, to feel to get their ego inflated sometimes. If it But I think the future of basketball coaching is the coach is really going to have to be able to tell players the why behind things. I think gone are the days where it's just like, I'm the coach because I said so. Um, Again, I'm not as big into the different generations, or these kids these days talk. I'm not that into that. But I do think that we have an informed populace now because information is accessible. So uh, it's easier to spot someone who is just an autocrat rather than someone who is going to be inclusionary, and give information and be collaborative between player and coach.
Yeah, I don't think the end goal changes at all. I think it will be what it's always been. How do I engage and motivate players for learning? And just looking back on my last 20 years, the way that we do that has changed.
Hmm.
And therefore, going forward, I think the way that we get their attention, keep their attention, will continue to change. But ultimately, I think at the end of the day, it will still be, how do I engage players? How do I get their attention so that they can learn? And, ultimately, learning is not any different, but how you go about helping them learn will change. And so it may be,
Yeah.
if you're watching this, it may be in the technology and how they consume things, or where they consume things. But
Hmm.
I've looked back even on the last 10 years and how we go about teaching. When I say we watch film, well, for the old heads in the room, you're hooking up film and putting it on a
Yeah.
projector and throwing it on there. For the younger ones, you're putting it in a VHS tape in. You're putting a CD in. Well, how am I doing it now? Now I'm sending clips straight to their phone, or I'm posting things on social media for them to watch. But at the
Hmm.
end of the day, they're still watching film. So
Just looks different.
it just looks different. So again, I just think the goals will be the same, but how we go about doing it will change. And that's where, for us as coaches, that's where we need to stay, up to the dates on how those things are done, and continue to learn how to. And so for this day and age, it's, learning how to do sports code, or how to put together clips on a huddle and send stuff out.
Hmm.
Going forward, the platform may change, but I think ultimately that what you're doing is not going to change.
Yeah. I think too, we as coaches, we need to realize that we're in competition with all the other things that our student athletes could be doing other than playing basketball.
Mhm.
And I think the hardest challenge for the future of basketball coaching is going to be balancing that. Like, if we're going to be good, a serious program, and we want to compete with other serious programs, that's hard, and it takes physical effort, and let's just be as basal as we can about it. Pain. Like, you gotta hurt, you gotta lift weights, you gotta run, you gotta, all those things are uncomfortable. And that's just part of how we have to do things. Like, there's no, you can call it a small sided game, and instead of running sprints, you can dress it up with whatever, but it's physical work, which our body wants to fight.
Mhm.
And we're in competition with all the other things that a player could be doing that aren't physical work and are fun. And how we're going to sort of like do what the sport demands, but still outperform the competition of all the other things that an athlete could be doing with their time.
Yeah,
That's going to be a strong tug of war, um, that I think it's going to be a challenge to deal with.
I totally agree. They're going to do what is fun, what is most fun. And so keeping things fun, that's a huge part of it. For I think about even like the length of our seasons. I'm thinking, if I'm doing some basic drills for 6 to 7 months, I'm going to lose kids' attention, and it's not going to be fun for them anymore. So that's influenced even how we've changed the way that we practice and schedule games, and all of that even now. So yeah, really good
Yeah,
point there. That's good. All right, so 5 topics generated
yeah.
to us, and
Thanks,
uh,
Google Bard.
yeah, appreciate that. Appreciate them for providing that for us. So,
Yeah,
going forward, want to continue to remind you of our coaches clinic that's coming up in the fall, September 8th and 9th in Greenville, South Carolina. We've got a great group of speakers here. And this coming week, I'm hoping to get all of the topics posted, and we'll include a link to that down in the description, so you can click on that and see who all's coming, and then also what they'll be talking about. It's going to be a great time here. And so I hope a lot of you can come and attend that. I think that'll do it for us for today.
okay.
Appreciate everyone who joined us for the live show. If you missed any part of it, you can go back and watch or listen. Head over to YouTube. You can search Hoops Forum there and find the full length video on Randy's YouTube page. Or if you're more inclined to listen, just go to any podcast platform and search A Quick Timeout to find the audio version of the show. For Randy Sherman, I'm Tony Miller. We'll talk to you again next time.